It was us.
That it was the parents.
Is that because they found no entrance into the house?
We don't know why.
Well, we know, Larry, that a window was open. Under that window was a suitcase, as if a step to get up through it.
Hey, hold on 1 second.
When did John tell Linda Arndt about the broken basement window?
In the book, you write about the suitcase in the open basement window, but the police say you never told them about it.
Oh, that's false. I told Linda Arndt that I found the window open and I found a suitcase under the window. They have photos of this in their crime scene photos.
That was March of 2000. Jump to 2024, and John is still saying...
And I told the police officer that morning, I said, look, the window's open. It shouldn't have been open.
Well, let's check that, why don't we? Does Linda Arndt mention anything about John telling her about a window, a suitcase, or forced entry in her report?
I got nightmares in my head, I fear. Thoughts build up until I can't feel. My mind fills up into a creature, and it haunts me somewhere much deeper. I got nightmares in my head, I fear.
Hello and welcome to True Crime Rocket Science, the most authentic voice in true crime. Well, let's take a look at that report. Detective Supplemental Report, First Degree Murder, Detective Linda Arndt, date of report January 8, 1997. On December 26, 1996, at approximately 06:35 hours, I received a phone call at my home phone number from Detective Sergeant Robert Whitson. Sergeant Whitson informed me that officers were on the scene of a reported kidnapping. The reported kidnapping had occurred at 755 15th Street, located in Boulder County, Colorado. JonBenet Ramsey, a 6-year-old female, was reported to have been kidnapped from her home. JonBenet's mother had found a ransom letter inside the home at approximately 0550 hours this morning. JonBenet had last been seen inside her home at approximately 2200 hours on December 25th, 1996. There was no apparent forced entry to the residence. Other family members who were inside the home from the night of December 25 through the morning of December 26 had not been harmed. These family members included JonBenet's mother, father, and brother. Spoiler alert, there is nothing anywhere in the entire supplemental report dealing with that morning, which goes on for pages and pages and pages, and is very detailed. There is nothing about a window, an open window, or a broken window. And there is nothing about a suitcase either. See for yourself. Now, although forced entry comes up in the first paragraph of the first page, in that there is no forced entry, we can go through page after page after page, and there is no mention that morning that John mentions this seminal piece of evidence anywhere. Why not? Meanwhile, there are microscopic details that include no prints in snow or frost, the exact times various officers arrived, the fact that John was considering offering a reward, the fact that Arndt saw John going through his mail, specific people identified who the Ramseys at this point considered viable suspects, even John apparently saying that he read bedtime stories to JonBenet and Burke, something that he would later deny and said was a miscommunication, but no mention of the basement window. It seems a little unlikely, doesn't it? You'd think with all that fluff and detail across 19 pages, Arndt would put an important detail like that there if it was out there to begin with, right? Now, to be fair, the report does mention John mentioning the basement window, but that only happens on page 18, the second last page of the 18-page report. So if it does come up in the report, when does it come up and how exactly? Before we get to that, if you haven't subscribed to the channel, please do. If you're finding this analysis worthwhile, please like, share, leave a comment. You can also hit the thanks button, and let's get started. So it turns out after 21:30, so after 9:30 that night, that's the night of the 26th of December, the day after Christmas. Now it's the night of the 26th of December. After John had lawyered up, the subject of the broken window finally came up, according to Arndt's report. At approximately 21:30 hours, Detective Sergeant Larry Mason and I met with John Ramsey at the, and I think that's Fernie residence. Sergeant Mason and I met with John Ramsey in an office area room located in the basement of the, and I think it's Fernie residence. Other persons present in this room included John Ramsey's brother, Jeff Ramsey, Blank, who introduced himself as an attorney, and a stockbroker with Blank located in Atlanta, Georgia. Dr. I think that's Booth, the physician for the Ramsey family. It's interesting that he was there, and Mike Bynum, who described himself as a friend of John Ramsey and also as an attorney who was providing John Ramsey with advice. Quite an interesting collection of people, an attorney and a stockbroker, a physician, and then also an attorney, and one who at this early point was already providing John Ramsey with advice. That's in the report. Sergeant Mason and I met with John Ramsey for about 40 minutes. The following information was learned from this meeting. I asked to speak with Patsy Ramsey. I was told by Dr. Booth that Patsy Ramsey was too medicated to talk to anyone. Dr. Booth had given Patsy Valium. So no one could talk to Burke, now no one can talk to Patsy, and now John is doing the talking, but with an attorney at his side. And now the next part is really interesting.
Are you sure you want to hear this?
Quoting from Linda Arndt's report, John was told that there was a broken window located in the basement of his home. John told us that he had broken out a basement window about 4 to 5 months ago. This window was located in the room where the Christmas decorations were kept.
Oh, hold on 1 second.
So in Linda Arndt's report, page 18, it says John was told that there was a broken window located in the basement of his home. So what we get out of this narrative isn't that John told Arndt, but that John was told about the basement window that night by the police.
And I told the police officer that morning, I said, look, the window's open. It shouldn't have been open.
But we didn't.
In the book, you write about the suitcase in the open basement window, but the police say you never told them about it.
It's a strange contradiction, isn't it? One version from John, another version from the police. Who's right? Who do we believe in this instance? But there's something else I want to address as well. It's this myth of no police being at the residence and the inference that they were slow to act and didn't know what they were doing. Let's go back to the very first paragraph from Linda Arndt's report. On December 26, 1996, at about 06:35, at my home phone number from Detective Sergeant Robert Whitson. Now, first of all, consider the speed of this response. Patsy called 911 at exactly 05:52. The first officer arrived at 05:55, just 3 minutes later. I mean, that's almost instantaneous. Yet John, in his interview with Larry King, said,
A uniformed police officer arrived relatively quickly.
Relatively quickly. Wow, okay, so was he supposed to get there in 2 minutes or less? Within about half an hour of the officer arriving at the scene, at least 2 other officers had been alerted. Whitson, being one, and Arndt at home, was alerted on her home phone. Bear in mind, this is the day after Christmas, when police departments around the nation would likely to be understaffed.
But she made observations in her report that would cause you to think, well, he isn't acting right.
Is John right? In Arndt's report, she notes that Patsy said she found the ransom note at around 5:50 a.m., which means if the Ramseys called 911 at 5:52, it means they read the note. Bear in mind, it's a 3-page ransom note. It's the War and Peace of ransom notes. They read the note, the one reads the note and the other reads the note, and then they searched the house all within 2 minutes. I think another way of putting it is they didn't read the note or search the house in 2 minutes. And the Ramseys actually confirmed this, that they didn't search the house on Larry King.
Some people ask why you didn't search the house right away, run through the whole house right away.
We thought we were dealing with a kidnapping.
Also, according to her first paragraph, Arndt writes that JonBenet was last seen at 10 p.m. when she was supposedly put to bed. But in the Ramseys book, they say they left the Whites at 8:30 p.m. and put Burke to bed an hour later. John himself went to bed at 10 p.m. This suggests JonBenet was put to bed almost an hour earlier at 9 p.m. compared to the version given to Arndt. Then going back to her report, in the note left by the reported kidnappers, the author of the note stated the reported kidnappers would phone the Ramseys between 0800 hours and 1000 hours. Sergeant Whitson requested that I respond to the Ramsey address on 15th Street. Sergeant Whitson was going to make attempts to have U.S. West Communications place a trace on all incoming calls placed to the Ramsey home. Now, one area that I feel is enormously disingenuous, towards Boulder PD, is that the Ramseys foist the ransom note onto the unsuspecting cops. The note says repeatedly not to call the police or the FBI. If you alert the authorities, she dies. If you do this, she dies. If you talk to a stray dog, she dies. And so the cops decide to leave a single officer in the house in order to honor what's in the note. And yet the Ramseys accuse the police and FBI of not being there, or of there only being one officer present. So do you see, it makes sense in the early minutes to do a thorough search of the house and then to give the note the benefit of the doubt, since time was of the essence. Arndt goes on to say, I went to the Boulder Police Department and obtained a handheld tape recorder as well as my notebook. I met with Detective Fred Patterson at the Boulder Police Department. Detective Patterson and I responded to the Ramsey address located on 15th Street. While at Boulder Police Department, I briefly met with BPD Officer Carl Veach. Officer Veach informed me that he had the ransom note which had been left by the reported kidnappers. I requested that Officer Veach make 3 copies of this note. This request was carried out. I retained possession of one of the copies of the note, another copy was given to Detective Patterson, and the third copy was placed in a sealed envelope and left on my desk. I quickly reviewed the contents of this 3-page note. Detective Patterson and I then responded to the Ramsey residence. Prior to arriving at the residence, we met with Watch 3 Sergeant Paul Reichenbach. We met with Sergeant Reichenbach at the rear of the Basemar Shopping Center at about 07:55 hours. Sergeant Reichenbach personally provided us with the following additional information. Are you counting how many officers are involved at this point? And to their credit, right off the bat, a few of them are getting a hinky feeling. Wouldn't you if you were in their shoes? Back to her report. The first officer on the scene was Officer Rick French. Officer French had told Sergeant Reichenbach that something didn't seem right. Incredibly, if one officer wasn't enough saying he didn't see footprints in the frost on the walkways, that was Officer Weiss. There was a second, Reichenbach, who made a similar observation. This is also in a report. Sergeant Reichenbach said there was a light dusting of snow on the ground when he arrived at the Ramsey residence. Sergeant Reichenbach did not notice any footprints or other tracks in the snow. Sergeant Reichenbach personally checked the exterior of the Ramsey residence. Sergeant Reichenbach did not notice any signs of forced entry to the residence. Now, if someone had entered and left through the grate and the area had been sprinkled or dusted in white snow or frost, wouldn't there be obvious dark marks in the area around the grate where the intruder scrambled in and scrambled back out again? Moist marks. Marks of sort of someone crawling on the ground and going on hands and knees. Also, do you think it's reasonable to get a ransom note, to think there's a kidnapping, and then basically not bother to search for JonBenet? Okay, then why should the police search for JonBenet? Let's face it, the bottom line with the Ramsey case is, if it was as easy as believing that it was a kidnapping and accepting it was a kidnapping based entirely on the ridiculous ransom note, well, if you accepted the note, if you just took it and accepted it at face value, then the Ramseys are immediately and instantly innocent. Well, wasn't that the point of it? Thank you for listening, and I'll see you guys next time.